Then the ass expelled me in his dung. Was pas marbur ka dikhar. But without the money bag. Munj money bag nahi hai. Rupee paisa nahi hai. Khalte paisa hai. The munj money khar manda. It remained within his belly. The kaure khar pasawsh do kul khalte ma. خودوجي رسده بودی که میگفت چیکار کو دو شاوریار وایرو یک دفعه اور باز دم گرفت نه. The grandee did not know himself how he made his escape from the palace. چرا فرار کرد؟ grandee خود خود نفهمیده. But for the sudden attack of asthma which had rendered the Khan insensible, چرا بیهوش کرد بی خزال تیر کرد. That night might well have been the last for the grandee's prosperous career. Not until he came out into the square, the chowk, under the fresh nocturnal wind. Nocturnal in shawana. Wind, body shawana ki. Did his soul return to his body. The danger had been staved off, but it had not been blown over. Tufan kam istajda magar khalas najda. When the Khan recovered, he would bethink himself of the man from Peshawar and cause them to be summoned before him. These men from Peshawar had to be removed. Inali magagar wo ek dafta alamat gut Peshawariyar baz bairu bas hal kharab gut bayad fawran Peshawariyar az inji ghaib kani. And removed at once before day came. Yani as-suq nashuda. But how? Chtor remove kani ra? Matlab as daftar chtor farig kani ki jail ra matlab farar kada. Ina wujud itna dara achhi bada. The grandee was perplexed in his mind, full confusion. Yesterday he could have had them executed or secretly put to death. And none would have so much as said a word. But today, those tested expedients were of no avail. Ali tamam try chizai ki technikai ki yaad dasht. Who knows but that the twin heads of the men from Peshawar would not have a third added to them. Ki khabar ki khazid dusar diye same saram shamil na khaj. His own. There remained one last resource. Yak Ramandat, Yak Chara, never yet tried by the grandee in all his manifold affairs of secrecy, escape from prison. Ki is waqtu de chala na chalanda magar yak chal manda ki nara bugim ki na farar kadas. Khazbandi khana. With this decision, he repaired to the office house where he had trusted men whom he could always rely upon to execute his orders without question and to hold their peace thereafter. Khabki chupki nafriyadasht kar amukat mugufd okay. Al fikr na ki mauna bayt khabar kanam kishmo ek raqam dige ina razam most secured jail kesta. Bayt farar dalji ke nahi. The sorcerers from Peshawar, jadugarai Peshawari, who had that night become object of interest to the Khan himself, were in fact just ordinary stonemasons. I mean, Sangtarashai Mamuli Buddha. It is drok in a Jadugara Tavizgara in the Khalaf Khan Hudarnamidun, Chichal Chalandau, Falan Kadau, who had been working together for many a year, Ardush and Walbudik Jeki Karmakadan, and had come to Kokan to seek a livelihood. But it was Nakariam the Buddha Taraf Kokan at Peshawar. Both were elderly men, Ardush Bakul, and had never had anything to do with sorcery in their lives. The grandee had simply made this up for the purpose of self-advancement. After a year and a half spent in the dark dungeons, the Peshawarians had recently been summoned for a brief interrogation at the torture tower to give fresh evidence. Baz investigation, the nature of which was no less obscure and bewildering than that which they had given at first. It was all about a woman, the very exam, whom somebody, somewhere, by means of black magic, had turned into a slave. And about a man who would not ransom her. Or on the contrary, about a man who had been turned into a slave and a woman who would not ransom him. Or both of them being turned into slaves. Whereupon somebody had cast an evil spell upon an aged military chieftain, and turned him into a Persian woman by the name of Sharafat. In short, the heads of the poor Peshaverians were in a maze, and they returned to their prison cell gloomily indifferent to that which awaited them, and knowing for certain only one thing. That now, after their second interrogation, nothing could save them from the executioner's block. Bazu takhte darra, diga durniya. The same interrogation to the same. It was in this conviction that they met the 3 jailers, who went down to them before dawn and unlocked their fetters. Acting with all due caution and secrecy, 2 of the jailers led the Peshaverians upstairs, while the 3rd remained below to file an incision on the empty chains. Everything went smoothly, in complete accord with the grandee's well-laid plans, when an unforeseen hitch suddenly occurred above. The prisoners, convinced that they were going to the scaffold, definitely more demanded a mullah. Being devout and godly Muslims, they refused to depart to receive the mercy of Allah unshriven. Persuasion was of no avail. Go! In vain did the jailers assure them in hurried, conspiratorial whispers that they were being set free. The Peshaverians did not believe it. And became more urgent than ever in their demand for a mullah. Meanwhile, the precious minutes were flying and the daybreak was drawing nigh. A time that was by no means auspicious for that which was afoot. Out of control. The attempt to reject the Peshaverians from the prison by force came to naught. For they raised an outcry, which drew a deep answering echo from the multitude of other prisoners in the dungeons below. Where the sounds were likely to be heard. The jailers were obliged to report the case to the grandee, who had wisely kept out of the way, albeit he was within call of the prison. The grandee did not happen to have his trusty mullah at hand at that moment. Much though he had foreseen, he had nevertheless overlooked his prisoner's strong faith in Islam. Kena Hussain Musulmana Sarsakht Musulmana yire chort nasded kena akhir denzi ban muna ki mullah rabayto. Secrecy forbade employing the offices of an outside mullah. Ye chunki secret government kha raha hai. Lekin ye ek mullah typical boot ki bataun qisar mufami don maraf mehman. Har roz khunam se tamam roz na mullah bayri na. Alu bas available nahi gujay rafta hu. Muttering imprecations and maledictions, the grandee ordered one of his trusted guards to disguise himself as a mullah. Akhir دوكري كده خب دوز ده ملا رامي قيديارم خد خرا خب سيكي كتاف شتاش ده بزاخير يقدنا همو guard يقدنا سبايا وحافظين كده جيل بود والبفتبور وشيش ملا جوش. And repair, that is, to don with a white robe and a white turban. And repair to the Peshawarians in that garb. The new begotten mullah approached them with a sanctimonious countenance. But instead of uttering the solemn words of prayer demanded by the occasion, his lips, by force of long habit, as much to his own surprise as suddenly vomited a torrent of profanity, as a result of which he was identified by the Peshawarians. The guard's blunder very nearly ruined the whole plan. Ali Khan blunder diya. Barnama takriban completely out of order. Horrified at the thought of not obtaining sacramental absolution and seeing that they were being deceived in this last and most important matter, the Peshawarians raised a still louder outcry. And the dungeons answered them back with a low roar, like the rumble on an earthquake. The case was reported once more to the grandee. He gnashed his teeth and his face paled as if acting a mirror to the pale streak of dawn that already glimmered in the east. زردی که نمایان شده بود در افق تازه در او صبح مشه رنگ زیمون زرد شده. The minutes flew. دقیقه تیر شده ریا. Dawn was nearing. طلوع شده ریا. The plan was miscarrying. برنامه out of control شده. Exposure threatened. کناری تمام خبر مشه که چالس کی بدهی. Impelled by fear بسیار زیاد ترس خورده. The grandee in his desperation, the آخری ناامیدی, resolved upon an extreme measure. He ordered the prisoner's escape to be announced and the alarm to be sounded by the blowing of trumpets, the beating of drums, the clanging of shields, the waving of torches, and the loudest possible shouting. Ki amu ki farar nishan namida? मतलब इन्हें दरवाज़े से रही कितनी है लगाम ज़दनी है बस मी तमाम एक्टिंग कितनी है कि दवक्ति फरार तमाम अलार्म बजाओ मुशा सर सदाम amid this tumult and hub जैसी सर सदा the Peshawarians were to be bound बस तक दा their screams being drowned in the general din, then gauged, tied up in thick woolen sacks मैंने गुनी बन गया and conveyed to the south gate on swift-footed steeds. भले गाड़ी आस भले जो शान धीरे मैंने गुनी बन कर भले आसवार के फौरन ये थेर भी दी. Accompanied by 4 trusty guards. 4 दना महाफिज कल्जी मोरा. Pursuit of the runaways was to be directed towards the north gate. लेकिन ये समम से पाया रहा बस दरवाजे शुमाल. रही के दाजी जुनूब. लेकिन नफरिया रज़ुन जो मुझे बोलना स्पष्ट डबल के. All this was carried out. मुताबिक plan अंजाम ददन. The trumpets blared, the drums beat, the torches blazed, the cries and shouts were raised, Catch them! Hold them! With drawn sword and bristling mustache, the grandee pranced before the prison on a white horse in the light of the flaming torches, as if he had just come dashing down at the sound of the alarm. He issued orders with a voice of thunder. To the north gate! The pursuit party swept off. The grandee in the lead upon a white horse with drawn sword raised aloft. As for the Peshawarians, suffocating in their sacks, they were rushed off towards the south of Kokand upon swift steps. إنها فوراً بلي أصبحت تيز از طرف الجنوب دولتا طرف مني غوني بند إنها تير ده. After a 2 hours ceaseless gallop, 2 ساعات كسا أس دواني قدينا. The guards drew up near an abandoned cemetery نزدیک یک قبرستانی کونا in a dense thicket of reeds and blackthorn bushes. مني بوتا منجي غلاز استرات كدن. The Peshawarians were shaken out of their bags. They were still breathing, albeit feebly. The morning sun, the fresh breeze and water from the irrigation ditch, plentifully thrown over them from a leathern folding bucket, had their desirable effect. The Peshawarians came to themselves and recovered the faculty of comprehending human speech. True, the speech that was addressed to them consisted almost entirely of blasphemies. But the Peshawarians were nevertheless able to gather their form that they were being set free. And they blessed the name of Allah for their so marvelous a deliverance. They received orders to proceed on their way and cross the southern border of the Khanate and never again to appear in Kokand. As Kokand border they were given 50 pieces of silver between them, half the amount which the grandee had assigned for softening the obduracy of the border watch. The other half the grandee shared among themselves, then leapt into their saddles and galloped back to Kokand. The first thing that the Peshawarians did upon finding themselves alone was to perform the ablution, of which blessed right they had been so long deprived in their underground prison. Then, spreading their robes upon the ground, they knelt with the rising sun upon their left hand and their emaciated faces turned towards the holy city of Mecca. As taraf chabshi mashriq as mashriq tulu shud afta wa rukh az nasuni Makkah shud. They prayed long, khayli tu namaz du draz khan, and earnestly by ikhlas, as befitted the importance of the miracle that had happened that day. When they had finished their prayers, peace entered their hearts. The pure, simple hearts of simple men, who honestly earn their bread by the sweat of their brow. They shared the money equally between them, 25 pieces of silver each, and hid it away against the time of their joining their families, which had suffered want in the absence of their breadwinners. Ali nan kamaigar is nakhemi buddiga salhay ke namani bekudam dalil banbud onu bispan kuna mun de jeb khesh ke me bubun da khana bidim. Then they trudged down the road, rejoicing in the sunshine of Tawa Burshda, the green foliage, Sabza Masta, and the birds, and the conversation about past misadventures, unable to understand either why, a year and a half ago, they had suddenly been seized and thrown into the dungeon. And or why that night they had as suddenly been thrown out of the prison under such peculiar circumstances. They could but shake their heads, marveling at the inscrutable ways of Allah, at the tangled skein of human destinies and the profoundly wise and deeply mysterious designs of those in authority which baffle the simple mind of the ordinary mortal. The next day, without further hindrance, and having suffered only to the extent of 10 pieces of silver each out of the 25 which they had laid aside, they crossed the southern border of the Khanate, and that same evening found them working, hewing stone for the construction of a new mosque. Thus, by little and little, from one ongoing job to another, they pursued their homeward way until they arrived safely in their native village and tasted of the joys of reunion with their families. We know not of their further destiny, but we believe that never again will they become grist to that ill-famous mill, where the waters of the self-interest drive the wheel of cunning. Diga ainda ona hezumi azu Asiya jor nashud ki unji khudpsandi wa khudparasti awi khudpsandi khudgharzi paye chalakir mein chalana, where the shafts of ambition set in motion the rack wheel of slanderous information and the milestone of envy grind the grain of falsehood. Amo millstone, amo sangi asiyai, kes hasad michala darao. Ukesta diga gandumi durogra diga ardnam ka. Yani diga dazira ha burna shadina. Ira khulase zi dastan ra, shawarin ra, ki bhai na fahmi dichar to qaidish di, na fahmi dichar azad chdi. The nocturnal storm which had raged around Peshavarians had not touched with its wing the Chaikhana wherein Khoja Nasreddin and the one-eyed thief had spent the night. I tufan ke na ter kada dazu Chaikhana azu khabar ijniya. One-eyed am qarar the Chaikhana rest kona ho Nasreddin. Only a faint echo of the alarm-raising drumbeat and trumpet blare had been wafted here from the prison, and the thud of hoof beats in the direction of Northgate had rung hollow and muffled upon the ground. Then all was silent again until the morning. Sirf ina unmu sarsadai asbaki az gate balna az taraf shumali ki na raftano ekam zamin larza shud az baad khairati bud ta subah gabna bud guna ej nafahmi chik sa. The moon had gone and the blue haze had vanished, giving place to the grey mist that precedes the dawn. But Khoja Nasreddin, his thoughts riveted on the fat merchant and his money bag. Tamam shao Nasreddin fixed the zia ki e money changer ui khalti paise zi. Had not yet closed an eye in sleep. 100 artful means of tricking the money changer out of 6,000 tangas had been devised and rejected. Takriban ego saddana chal kho chalit kint knim ki shahzar razi na inna michla khulasa tamam shao dami chorta ego saddana chal rahi chalit magar isko tamshir qabul na kad. Should I bait him with the false apparition of Prophet, Khoja Nasreddin pondered, Kmauri ego faida mitar diskanum, chalborum to the faidetia, gain repeated manizbinas. Or should I frighten him, tars with him, into giving money up? Yeah, matlab ura bazi bidum ya tars. And suddenly the hot flame of discovery shot him through from head to foot. Yak dafa khayal amadam search ta paishira mamla ra garam kat de josh avurdira. Here was a sure way of opening the money changer's bag. Yak idea amda taza. Everything became vividly clear. Pura plan adit. As if lit up by a white flash of lightning, all doubts were dispelled. Completely yaqeen kat ke chal khub chala. So intense was the force of his enlightenment that it communicated itself from Khoja Nasreddin to the house of the merchant at the other end of the city. The money changer began to toss about under his blanket. Breathing hard, smacking his thick lips and clutching the left side of his belly where he always carried his money bag. He said, nudging his wife, what a bad dream I had just now. I dreamt that I slipped and fell off a ladder into a feeding trough with oats, and that a grey ass gobbled me up. Money bag and all. Then the ass expelled me in his dung. But without the money bag, unj money bag niya, rupee paisa niya. Khalte paisa, the unj money khar manda. It remained within his belly. The kaure khar pasawaj do kuli khalte ma. Be quiet. Banko, let me sleep, his wife grumbled, thinking within herself. The handsome camelback, of course, never has such stupid, such indecent dreams. Smiling dreamily, she gazed at the window, which was turning rosy in the rays of dawn. Light maya. We the each was the camelback grande, khubna farir silk, khawaiz silk, bengi khochili. Heralding the birth of a new day, which bore within itself for everyone a full share of cares for her, for the money changer, and for the handsome camelback. Ki rozi nawa bibinim kichi dastan mera bere arsemo.